Hello, everyone, and welcome to Creative Live. Welcome to Creative Live if this is your first time here, or welcome back if you are a regular. My name is Kenna Klosterman, and I am your host today, host of Creative Live, and also host of Creative Live TV, as well as today's We Are Photographers podcast, which is a very special edition of the podcast as we are teaming up with Black women photographers all month long. It is February 2021, and we are celebrating Black History Month. We are bringing you 4 different photographers, filmmakers, creative directors throughout the month, and just really celebrating the community. Polly Irungu, who is the founder of Black Women Photographers, is a powerhouse. Be sure to go check out the site, join the community, find out the resources, hire a Black woman photographer today, so you can find out more all about that in the links. But let's start again by giving some shout outs or calling for shout outs. Again, if you are watching on creativelive.com/TV, you can click on the chat icon and you can jump in there, chat with your fellow folks viewing from around the world. We love to know where it is that you are tuning in from. So if you're on social media as well, give me those shout outs. Let's see how many countries in the world we can hear. We've got, let's see, we have got folks starting to tune in, so keep them coming. But let me bring on our guest today for the very first time on Creative Live. Her name is Tamie Thomas. She is coming to us from Dallas, Texas, where as of today, there has been a big snowstorm. We'll talk a little bit about that. She is a creative director, a photographer. She wears many, many hats, and she is a pleasure to have on. Her work has been seen in Vogue, Vogue Italia. Can't wait to hear about that. Wired, Forbes, Texas Monthly, OK Africa, and let's just give a big round of applause wherever you are, bumping on your desk. Welcome, Tamie Thomas to the show.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you so much for joining us. Again, I know this is just fun fact because, you know, let's be real. The snow has been pounding down in Dallas. You're in Dallas.
Yep.
Shout out if anybody else is in Dallas out there.
Yep.
And you told me what you had to do this morning. And I just want to share this with the world because I was like, what?
Please.
What did you have to do this morning?
Man, I had to boil snow. Yeah. Yeah.
So you have power, thank goodness.
But no water.
But no water. All right. Well, we are hoping that you get that water back quickly. It sounds like a story you're going to tell your future children,
man.
You know. And then there was
Yeah. The survival story, you know, instead of walking miles, I had to boil snow. So
exactly. So before we get started, let's do some of these shout outs. We have a photographer that you work with closely, and I can't remember how to pronounce his name. Paco. Paco. Thank you, Paco. Tuning in from Dallas. We have Dawn in Holly Springs, North Carolina. We have Ontario, Canada. Glenn in British Columbia, John in Denmark, Phoenix, Arizona, Brianna in Arkansas. We have Donna, who's in Fort Worth, who also has no water and no power. So we are thinking of all of you out there across the country. There's been just crazy weather. Anyway, besides the point, Tamie, let's talk about you.
Me.
You have many, many hats that you wear.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what it means to you. A lot of people hear the word creative director and are like, what does that even mean? Talk to me about how the role of creative director comes to life in your mind, and maybe that's some example projects that you've recently worked on. But what does that encompass for somebody who doesn't really know?
Yeah. So I like to describe creative director as a lot of my job happens before I come on set. So normally, and it's a little bit different from when I'm in or being in an ad agency per se. But as a creative director, I'm in charge of most of the time coming up with the idea, in charge of pulling all the creative pieces together, I'm the bridge of communication between the client and all the other creative entities. Most of the time, I'm the one who sources out the models, the set designer, makeup artist, photographer, like whatever it is that needs to happen for a campaign to happen. I come up with the idea and then I make sure everyone can make it happen. And then on set, I make sure it happens. And then post set, I make sure it looks like how I ideally pictured it to look. So that's my long, short answer. And I apologize a little bit if I'm having delay.
So juggling all the balls and, taking it from. Okay, I'll leave it to my team to let us know if there is any delay on our end. All right, Tamie. All right, everyone. Thank you for sticking with us. It's always something, right? Technical break when
Technical
we're live.
difficulties.
It's and I thought, I was worried about you in the snow. Meanwhile, it's me out in the paint. I don't. Here we go. Here we are. We're back. Thank you, everybody, for hanging with us. Let's see where we were. Let's just go back to Tamie. You were describing. Let's pick it up again. We're talking about what it means to be a creative director. You're innovating from start to finish, juggling all the pieces. Can you tell us about a recent project where it did all come together and what the importance of working with a team is? Because from what I've seen, you work with a significant number of people as you're putting these campaigns together.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I cannot describe how important the team is. Like it is the best thing to ever happen to a creative campaign. And one of my favorite things to do is putting great people in great places, like especially doing what they're good at, whether you're a makeup artist or you're a photographer or stylist. Like I love when creative entities come together, and from just ideation to execution, it's really fun to have people along that process, and people to have feedback on from ideation, and then people to actually execute it and do it such a good job on set. It's so great. And recently, I can't say what the project is, but it's coming soon, and I'm so excited for it to go live. But it was one of those projects that I'm working with it on. I worked with Ms. Zizi on, and we are coming up with a campaign towards the end of this month. And we've been working on this ideation for probably 3 months. Just because we had an idea, it didn't work out, so having to like kind of scramble, pandemic, but also like not pandemic in Texas, just working through those things. But that was the most recent project I've worked on, and that's one I'm so excited for. I cannot wait for you guys to see it. Oh my god.
Do you know when that is going to be released?
End of this month.
Okay, end of February 2021.
End of February 2021.
Okay, so let's talk about Ms. Zizi, because I know you're of the many hats. You do a lot of work with Ms. Zizi. Tell us what it is, and how you got involved, your role, all of the things.
Ms. Zizi is a streetwear for the diaspora. That's just a short form. I'm sure, Paco, if you're listening, I apologize if that's not the best way to describe it. But Ms. Zizi is just a diaspora-specific streetwear brand. So we have baseball jerseys, hockey jerseys, basketball jerseys, soccer jerseys, sweats sometimes. But it's a brand that started from Paco, and it was really to tie to make people not feel so alone, especially if you're of a diaspora group, and especially when you're not in your home country. It's just a great way to rep, and it's a different way to rep because normally you don't see Ghana on a basketball jersey, so it's like, oh, this is something different. And what I do for the brand is like, it started off as just creative direction, and I dabbled in our PR a little bit, but right now it's mostly creative direction, and just content photography on the side as well. And how I got started was kind of trial basis. So I had worked with our now Ms. Zizi photographer on a few projects, and he recommended that I hop on it was at the time a Ghana soccer jersey launch, and he recommended that Paco hire me for that role. Paco hired me, and it was probably like my least favorite shooting experience, just because it felt like so many things were just off and wrong, and it was not great to me. However, it was great chemistry about amongst everyone. So I got along with, obviously, I'd worked with Kwesi before. He's our company photographer, and Paco was my first time really meeting him. There was just great chemistry. Paco's a great leader. He really allows creative to be creative, and he's also very creative himself with his wacky ideas. So it was just great chemistry, and so we decided to continue working together, and that's how I kind of came onto the team and really started working with them more often. Yeah.
When you, what was that like in the beginning when you're saying like, I don't think this is going well, or, or you're not sure, but
Yeah.
then other people see you very differently, usually than you see yourself. What were you able to learn from sort of one of that early experience
Yeah.
of like, whether it's confidence or whether it's, you mentioned chemistry, like once you feel that is there, then, that maybe aids to confidence, or what sort of was the evolution of going from being new to working with a brand to then, as a creative director, really having to be responsible for the vision.
Yeah. Wow. I think it's definitely it's a perfectionist thing for me. Um, I've always kind of been I've always been critical of everything. And so creative direction was a great way for me to put my critical eye into good use rather than just be a critical person. And so I think that is understanding myself and how I see things and my attention to detail is what helps me push through whether or not things are going well on set or a model didn't show up or we're down a number or things like just many things happen that just happen on set. And so growing and understanding who I am as a person and who I am as a creative has helped me be more confident in saying that, yes, I'm a creative director. Yes, I'm a photographer. Yes, I do this. Yes, if hair needs to be done, I can do that. If makeup needs to be done, please don't ask me, but I can do that. So it's time and understanding who I am as a person that really aided me in understanding who I am as a creative.
That's a beautiful awareness, because it's definitely sort of a lifelong journey, I would say,
Yes.
as we all continue, to evolve, whether that's in ourselves or in our careers. And I had noticed that you wrote, one of the things you wrote about yourself was, what sets me apart is that my weakness is also my strength. And in terms of being a very critical person, in terms of
Yeah.
being a perfectionist, attention to detail, like I see those traits in myself as well. So I totally hear you in terms of how it can be hindering. But yet then, it is when you work with a team,
Mm-hmm.
it's one thing to, like you just said, like I know how to do makeup, but don't ask me to.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's being that ability to let other people shine in their space, is it sounds like it's a super cool, role to be able to play and
Best
put and
role.
uh,
Oh.
best role. What about the photography side then? Are you ever having to do both? Are you like, talk to me about then, there's one thing when you're working with a brand or, on a bigger project. Talk to me about creating for yourself.
Shout out to all the photographers out there. um, it's harder than creative directing to me. Just because it's like I don't necessarily love putting on two hats at the same time.
Yep.
Just because it's harder to be perfect. Um, but when I do, it's I what I do is like I scale it down. So maybe my idea when I'm only creative directing is just this big campaign. But when I'm the photographer, I have to think about lighting. I have to think about how many resources I have. Where am I going to shoot? Am I going to have studio light? Am I going to have natural light? Like all these other factors that it's like, okay, let me scale down whatever I need to do to make it workable for me. Um, so it's I'm still learning. I don't like to like I can't confidently enough say that I am a photographer, but I'm good at it. Not my favorite hat to put on, but I'm good at it. And it helps because when I'm working with other photographers, I can speak photography language. So if I need to change the aperture or I need to know what type of light they need or equipment they need, it's better for me. But photography is hard.
Tamie, photography is hard. And I think you don't realize that until you actually get into it. I
Yes,
mean, this like notion that all we do is press a button is just redonkulous.
I know.
And and but I think it's because of that, because once you know that all then it is, I don't know. I want to hone in on, because you are not the only one that
Yes.
has a problem calling themselves a photographer, because it's that it's this like, well, what does that even mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, there's, what does it mean to be a professional photographer? What does it mean to be an amateur
Yeah.
photographer? What does
Yeah.
it mean to have being a photographer be part of what you need to be in order to be a creative director
Yeah.
within,
Yeah.
whatever the role is? So dig a little bit deeper as to why do you have a hard time calling yourself a photographer? And can you say right now, I'm a photographer?
Oh man, it's because I'm a perfectionist.
I
And
know.
so I know and I see other people who do it better and have more experience, or maybe they have the eye of what I want, or maybe it's because like when I'm on set, I know the process of how long it took me to get that one photo, or how long I didn't have to set up the light, or the model was not as great as I hoped it would be, so I have to work with what I have, or like there's just so many things that happen. And so confidently saying I am a photographer is like, oh, but everything didn't go perfect. So are you a photographer? That I think that's why for me it's like, oh, like shout out to other photographers, but Tamie, you can like don't call yourself that quite yet. Yeah, I think that's what it is.
Well, I think, look at your work. Look at the fact that you say, I've been published in Vogue, Wired, Forbes.
Fair.
Tell me about the first time you were published in Vogue
Oh my
Italia. What was the
God.
image? Like, what was the scenario? Talk to us about, did that give you a
Yeah.
boost?
Oh, for sure. For sure it gave me a boost. It was I was interning at this agency, and the photos that were published in Vogue Italia were photos I like taken with a photographer friend for my birthday. And so he was testing out, okay, let me see if I can get published or not. And so he submitted the photos to Vogue Italia's digital platform. And then it was just one random morning, and he texted me. It's like, look, and it just had the Vogue logo on it, and I was like, oh my god! So yeah, I don't want to like scream, so you guys are like, ah! But it was such an amazing feeling, and it's definitely a confidence boost. It's definitely a confidence boost. And it was the right confidence boost to like let me know that I should just keep going. Not enough to be like I've arrived, but definitely enough to be like, yeah, okay, you have something, just keep going.
Are there other moments, or is it interactions with any mentors, or what are some other moments that you've had where you're like, can I keep going, like, or that things
Yeah,
that this is what we all struggle with, when we're in creative careers, creative pursuits. It's not easy. Like you said, photography is hard, but being an entrepreneur is hard. Like, are there some other examples of times when you doubted
oh man, all
yourself,
the
and
time.
how you kind of continue to push on?
I doubt myself all the time. I don't think there's a point that I don't doubt myself, but I also recognize that that's part of the process. And also I realize that I'm on a journey, and I think the doubt also comes in because I'm not exactly where I want to be. And that doubt is also kind of this motivation to keep going, because the moment I stop doubting myself, I'm either at the pinnacle of my career or like I'm not alive anymore. So it's one of the two, and I'm just gonna have to get to either point. Um, and so for me, doubt is part of the process. How do I not doubt myself, or what do I say to myself? I just have to keep going. Um, I think the really important thing is that I know the type of life I want to live. And creating, I say to anybody that would listen, like I live to create and I love to create. And if I wasn't creating, I'd be an interior decorator creating my home. Like I have to do something to bring what I see in my mind to life. And if I'm not doing that, then I'm probably not going to be the most happy person out there. And so essentially, I'm doing it for me, and everything else is just an added benefit. But I'm doing it because it's what I need to do to live my best life. And so that's the reason I haven't stopped, and that's the reason I keep going, because I need to do it. Like, I need it. Yeah.
I think it's beautiful what you said, though, earlier about, doubt, and recognizing that if we're not doubting ourselves, then we're not trying hard enough, or we're not pushing ourselves.
Yeah.
And so just that, like you said, just being aware of that is the place to not feel like, oh, I don't want to
Yeah.
not doubt myself, but that's, that is just awareness. Okay.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
like continue to do.
Yeah.
But I think it's awesome to just to understand and know what your intention is and why you're doing the things you do.
Mhm.
I want to go back to earlier when we were talking about Mizizi and it being a streetwear brand for the diaspora, and you talked about not always being connected to, or or seeing your people.
Mhm.
Like, talk to me about, talk to me about your childhood. Are you first generation
Yes,
American
I sure am. I
Nigerian?
sure am.
And talk to me about what where you grew up and what that
Yeah.
experience was, and what that does mean to you in terms of the pursuit of your work.
Yeah. I'm first generation Nigerian, or first generation Nigerian American. Or is that right?
Yeah.
Well, I came to the country when I was 8 years old, so I technically am an immigrant myself. So, yeah. But at this point, I've spent more time here than I have in Nigeria, so I Nigerian American, but more American. Anyway, um, so my Africanness, my Nigerianness, I think my Nigerianness is what drives me to be so critical of myself, is that, we're never satisfied. Like, anyone with immigrant parents, or anyone with just strict parents in general, is like straight A's or nothing, doctor, lawyer, or nothing. And so it's not necessarily my parents that push that, but the community, is pushing that. And so I think that's what also drives my creative pursuit. Is like, if I'm not a doctor, I'm going to be the best creative director out there. Um, Very Nigerian mentality. I know other Africans, have that too, but Nigerians have this sense of pride that we get taunted about, but also works to our own benefit. So I think my upbringing as a Nigerian has aided me in that. Um, so I came here when I was 8 years old. My parents and I lived in Nashville, Tennessee. Went there for middle school, elementary school, and high school, and college. And so I'm a Texas transplant recently, but wow, I've never really thought about like how my growing up really affected me. Well, let me put it this way. So I've always wanted to be a doctor. I went to college to try to study pre-med. It was in that process that I discovered that medicine is not for me. I would not be happy if I wasn't if I was a doctor. And I want to essentially thank my parents too, because they could have been very Nigerian parents and like, you have to be a doctor, but they didn't do that. They let me kind of take a back seat and understand who I was as a person. I've always been creative. I've always loved taking pictures. I've always loved people taking pictures of me. And so I think growing up, I had that in the back of my head, like, I'm creative. I sing, I can dance, just different creative things that I've done like as a child growing up. And so it's like, that is what aided me in pivoting towards creative. I don't know if that made sense. It's like trying to
Totally.
pull from the back of my mind to the front, but yeah, I don't know if that answered your question.
No, it does. It's always curious to hear, when people discovered their creativity. Some of
Yeah.
us, is when you're always aware of it, and some people, um, I mean, creativity comes in many, many forms, and
Yes.
we always say here at Creative Live, there's a creator in all of us, and business is creative.
Yes.
There's, it's not just like art being creative.
Yeah. Yeah.
Being a doctor, there's
It's creative in its own
they
way.
gotta be solving problems left, right, and center.
Yeah.
And but I think it's I don't know. It's interesting the effect of what sort of our childhood or beliefs when we were younger, and how we grow up affects what we are, the path that we follow. And sometimes it is having to break through what we were told we should do, or, or what have you. And it, like you said, it makes your drive to be the best creative director and, photographer out there even that much stronger.
Yeah.
But I also think it's interesting in terms of sort of the choices of projects that you work on, or things that you're drawn to. And I wanted to talk a little bit about, I was perusing through your website and socials, and it's always interesting to me what people put at the top of their Instagram, because to me those things are likely the most important things to those people right now. So talk to me about the Portrait Noir project, brand, that you have been involved in a number of these, the Process BTS videos. That is really great because you expose people to, the process of the different projects that you're working on. And so this was a project, at least the one that I was looking at, about rebranding for Portrait Noir.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about that business and just what sort of this behind the scenes video meant to you, or yeah.
So the Portrait Noir were started by Kwesi, who's simultaneously Mzizi's company photographer. Started as a way to really share Blackness and Black portraiture, and Black portraiture, because it was something that we saw was essentially he saw that was missing when you looked at Pinterest. Pinterest has done a great job rebranding so far, but when you were looking at inspo photos, it was very hard to find Black faces for specific concepts. So it started to kind of fill that void, and with the rebrand, we wanted to create imagery along with the new logo, with the new font, and just the new page. And so we decided to kind of take people along the behind the scenes process and really highlight how those pictures came to life. And it was really special to me because it was one of the first times that I was on camera explaining creative direction or what I did, and also highlighting the people that we worked with. And so that was essentially we wanted to do BTS but make it a little more elaborate. And so that was how the process came to life.
Nice. I mean, it's always fun to, like you said, hear directly. This is how we learn, right? We see other people doing their thing, and then we start to understand more about how it all comes together. Again, if you're new, you might not even know how a team gets out there and works together. I'm curious if you can think back to when we were just talking about, you were creative early on, but going back to photography, can you remember an image that you saw of that somebody else's image, where that moved you so much emotionally that you're like, wow, photography? Because for some people it's painting, and it's other things. What do you think you're drawn to with regard to photography, and that being sort of the industry you're in?
I want to say the most significant memory for me was when, and I don't know the photographer who shot the photos for this, but it was in tandem with Beyonce's Formation video or music video, and all the visuals that came consecutively after that for the Lemonade album. That's what it's called. And I think for me, it was how photography told the story of what the videos also did, and how Black it was, and not just Black in the sense of culture, but Black people were lit well. Skin tone was great. Colors blended. There were so many things that meshed just with the overall visuals for that project. And I think I was a sophomore in college, and that for me was sensation overload. I was in love with everything about that project, and the photos that came with the project, the videos, everything. And that was essentially like my wake up to this existing, but I didn't necessarily know what it was, but I just knew that, wow, this, I want this. Don't know how, but I want this. Yeah.
I love it. I mean, it again, it is like you once you're in something, sometimes you forget like
Yeah.
what first got you there, um, and and so being able to recognize that then and kind of see how that influences, what you are creating today,
Yeah.
even that, it, yeah, it. I love hearing, what some of those early sort of influences were. Um, in kind of further than that, though, then what about yourself? Like, was there an early image that you created where you now have in your mind like what you like? I want that. Was there one where you were like, I did that, and what was that like, or can you describe that image?
Man. Um, I think it's it's also mental pictures of just what I remember from being young and living in Nigeria. Um, it's either remembering how vibrant certain houses were, or what colors of clothing I wore on my fourth birthday, or just like looking at pictures of what my parents' couch looked like when we were back home. It's just different visual cues that for me recalls my earliest memories of just creating, or things that I care about now, that I remember were cool to me when I was in Nigeria, or just color elements, or story elements. And for example, one aesthetic that I'm really into now is like film and retro. And I think I'm into it now because I wish I took more pictures then, or I had more of a documentary or ways to document um, my life then, my parents' life then, their parents' life then. And I think that's why I'm so obsessed with it now, is because I'm trying to do those things that I wish they did for me, so that I could like pull from pictures of my grandparents, or pull from pictures of where they used to live, or what their village looked like, or just different things like that. Those are my early cues that inform me now. Um, yeah, I think that's that's my answer to that.
I want to talk more about then film photography
Yes.
and digital, because I did see on some of the projects, there may have been somebody doing the digital photography, but
Yeah.
you're doing the film photography,
Yeah.
and so talk to me about like what type of film photography, how often are you doing that?
Yeah.
Are you integrating it into the business side? Is it for fun? Like talk to me about film, because a lot of people are interested in getting back into film.
It's a lot harder um, than digital, in my opinion. Unless you just have the gift for it. Congratulations to you. But for me, film was something that I was like really, I admired a lot of film photographers. Mike in Dallas is a film photographer out here. Zerb Melish is a film photographer out here. I'm just shouting them out, but they're like really dope film photographers who I looked at their work on Instagram and I was just like, I just want to take a film photo. If I can just take one film photo. And so on a whim, I was either buying like camera equipment or visiting a camera store, and there was a 35 millimeter film camera, and I was just like, you know what, let me just buy it, let me just get it. Bought it, they were very helpful, bought a bunch of film for it. um, and it's still an experiment. I don't do it as often as I would like to, just because I think there's a lot of elements. Like I don't want to just take a photo of like a car or something. I think that's the perfectionist in me. It's like I don't want to do that. So I kind of pick and choose when and where I bring my film camera to. I like to bring it on set and see if I can play with light and digital. But film just requires a lot more. Um, I can't. like a picture can be overexposed in film but can't be overexposed in digital. And so learning that, it's like, okay, so I need adequate lighting in order to shoot film. Okay, then I need to make sure, first of all, I need to even know how to roll the film in my camera. I need to know how to load the film correctly. I need to know when 16 stops is done. It's just so many things. And so I'm not gonna like charge people for film photography quite yet. It's so fun. It's a great way to slow down and really be intentional about pictures and intentional about what you're capturing, and making sure your subject can stay still. You stay still. It's a great kind of I wouldn't call it a break, but it's almost like a break from the normal pace. Yeah.
Well, I love the way you describe it, because it is that word that you use, you have to be intentional, because you only have a certain number of frames in that roll of film, and so it becomes, and I'm always curious if once people are even on that same set doing film and
Yeah.
digital, if it changes your approach to the digital work as well, because you start to see differently? Like you mentioned the light and the like,
Yes.
are you looking at things in a different way?
For example, I know I can get away with with a picture being underexposed if I'm taking it on digital, just because I can always bring back light in post. But I can't get away with that in film, and so it's like, well, let's just fix the lighting overall. Things like that, or having the subject be like, you can't move because one, I have to fix this focus, and I probably would only take 3 photos of you, so those 3 photos have to be wonderful. Versus like digital, I can take 200 photos of you in the same spot. And so it provides a little more, I guess, a little more to my detail oriented nature, and it allows just things on set to try to slow down. Because on set things can be very quick. You need makeup done, you need hair done, you need everything kind of moving because you only have a limited amount of time. But can we take this break and make sure the frame looks good? Does the model look good? Is there anything out of frame on the set? Just, I think film and digital in the same kind of timeline helps everyone involved take a break and make sure like everything on set is perfect. It's never going to be perfect, but it's as close as it's going to get.
We could try, Tamie.
Yeah.
We could try.
We can try.
Perfectionists.
It will never be perfect, but we're there.
Or we shift our definition of what perfect is, because
For
maybe
sure.
it's all perfect anyway.
For sure.
This is my work, though. I say this because this is my work too. I did notice in one of those behind the scenes process videos, where you as creative director come in and are sort of looking at the frame as to where the photographer was. Is that part of again, going back to like how you as creative director, if you're not creative director and photographer, how you're interacting with them? Are you literally like in there making sure the frame is what you want it to be?
Absolutely. But that's also a great thing about working with people that you trust and people that you already love their work. It allows you kind of to focus on other things. So maybe you focus on the time of the studio, or you just focus on other things and let the photographer or let the creative do what they do best. But it's always great to be able to see the frame. For example, I may have 3 shots that I need happen. You can do everything else, but I need these 3 shots. Maybe I have 4 people on set. I need a group shot. They need to be sitting in this chair. They need to be like this. I need it to be landscape and vertical. That's what I need. Do that, and I'll leave you alone. And so I'm always in that kind of process, but I really do enjoy letting great people do great work. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, it just, again, it's interesting that then when you're saying, I know what I need, X, Y, and Z, it's almost like, have you storyboarded that out? Like when you're going into it, talk to me more about, you're like, yes, girl.
So much pre-work.
talk to us about again for people who aren't as familiar with doing these types of team projects, like what is the pre-work that goes into, maybe you can, I don't know if you can go to the project that you're most excited about right now, but just, you know, in general, like as a little mini.
I'll talk about that one. So once the idea is like kind of verbally agreed upon, because what we do is bounce ideas off of each other. So Paco, Kwesi, and myself are our like ideation team. And so once we've kind of talked about the idea amongst ourselves, it's my job to kind of flesh it out and make it plain so that when we're explaining it to the rest of the team, when we're explaining it to other creative entities and the models, they see what we already saw. And so storyboarding, and that sounds complex, but really what I'm doing is creating a Google presentation. So it's not like this fancy thing. It's just like a Google presentation with inspo photos. If I need to put a few words on there. For example, one thing that I did on this past project was talk about the makeup style I want for this shoot. And so we're doing an 80s aesthetic, for example. I need to see purple liner, or I need to see like key elements that were key in pictures in the 80s. Or for styling, I need to see denim, or I need to see colorful backgrounds, or I need to see colorful clothes. Like different elements I can explain on that Google slide. And then just other info like location, phone numbers, who to reach out to, things like that. But I flesh it out on this inspo board. And then I give it to all the creative entities involved, and then we kind of have a like full creative meeting where they can ask questions and we talk through that process. And then we get to set, and then we make it happen. So it's like there's a whole before coming on set, a whole before.
Right. And then, like you were saying earlier, like making sure that in the midst of it, you're getting what you needed for the project at the outset. I'm curious, going back to sort of you and getting into this line of work. You in terms of the many other hats, talk to me about your. Did you say you're in ad school or finishing up ad school? Or talk to me about that. Congratulations!
Thank you.
How's that playing into the bigger picture of Tamie?
Of like I want to live life. Like I want to create the rest of my life. I don't want to work in what I'm doing creatively. I want to live it in the morning, live it in the afternoon, live it when I go to bed. I want it to be my whole life. And so that was really one of the inspirations for me to go to ad school, because I know that there are people who do it full time, and there are people who do it as their 9 to 5. And I also wanted to do it on a bigger scale. So one day, you know, hopefully I'm directing a Super Bowl commercial. That would be fantastic. But essentially, like, this is the life I want to live, and ad school is part of that process and getting me to this life. And so that was my big push for it. And so it plays into my overall life plan, is that Temi wants to create. So Temi's making sure that she creates all her life, and makes a lot of money from it. So yeah.
Yes. What was the biggest risk that you've taken so far?
Doing this. It's betting on yourself, really. Like I said, I went to school to be a doctor, and I graduated school not having any idea what I wanted to do. And I kind of stumbled upon creative direction. Like I didn't even know, I knew advertising when it was an industry, but I didn't know what it was. I knew creating was there, but I didn't know like I could create, because you always see like, why am I forgetting her name? But Anne Leibovitz, like you think that she's like the pinnacle and there's no way you can get there. So you don't necessarily equate your journey to being connected to people who do that on a larger scale. And so I stumbled into creating, or into creative directing and photography, and continued learning from there. And I've been learning as I go. So I forgot the question.
I think it was about taking risks. Like what
Taking
are
risks.
yeah,
Oh
yeah.
yes. So the risk was that I'm not a doctor, so I'm trying to figure out what creating looks like not being that. Um, the risk is the risk is you're kind of subject to the opinion of other people. So you might think it looks really cool. Kenna might not. Creative life might not. So it's this risk of like you're putting yourself out there, and it's like, here, like my work, like what I've done. And when people don't, I'm not gonna lie, it hurts because you're like, I did this for you. So when people don't like it, it's like, what did I do wrong? um that's the risk in doing it. It's like you're subject to people's opinion, you're subject to people's eye, but also, what would you rather do?
That's right. I mean, you keep going back to, and I really appreciate you saying, I'm creating the life that I want. And you could have stayed in med school and been miserable
Yeah,
because you
but I
realize
would
that
be
it,
a good doctor.
but you would have been a good doctor, but you may have been miserable, or maybe you wouldn't have
Very.
been. Who knows? But you made a choice, and I think that's the the beautiful thing is seeing, that when you can live at, from choice,
Yeah.
and it is a risk, or create any of the, creative, being a creative entrepreneur, it gives you the greatest responsibility, but also the greatest risk, and reward, freedom and responsibility, because you're sort of, it's on you to,
Yeah.
to keep creating.
Yeah.
Um, I, I'm curious, what, what when you do, like, what, I mean, I kind of already have the answer, I think. I was going to say, like, what makes you feel most alive?
Yes.
But it's not,
Creating.
yes, exactly. I was going to say, wait, she's already given me that answer in a
I know,
way,
I keep
but
saying it.
no, I mean, but that's like, what is it about, like, being a doctor, or I don't know. I'm just trying to get to the, like, what
Mhm.
is it that wasn't satisfying within
Yeah.
that, um, just that you recognized?
Yeah. Um, for me, it was, it just didn't feel right. Like, I'd sit in lecture halls and just feel so alone and isolated, even though like I'm sitting in a lecture hall full of people, but they're not struggling to get a C on this biology assignment. I am. And it was just this it was like being honest with myself on like, I don't want to sit here and read 50 something pages worth of a subject that are you really interested in, versus like if you give me a book about photography or you give me a book about creative direction, I will sit through it and I will read it. So it's like I just had to be honest with myself. Like, I had to really look at myself and just like, no, it's not because you're not smart. It's just you don't have the passion for this. And so I'm not the type of person that I can do something well if I'm not passionate about it. Like, you can tell. You'll see it on my face, you'll see it in my attitude. I can't hide it. And so it was really like, Tammy, you have to work in line with what you are passionate about. If not, everybody else is going to be miserable because you're miserable, and that's awful. So like, find it, really find it. And I took the time to stumble upon it and find it and continue in it. So um
And that's the commitment part.
yeah.
You know,
Oh
that's
man.
that's the commitment. Is it's one thing to, like, find something and then to make it work because it's hard.
Yeah.
It's and it's super commendable. This is why we love to, bring people on who are living the creative life, because we are all, it's those of us who are trying. It's, we're not alone,
Yeah.
and we're in it together. Talk to me about community,
Oh
and,
yeah.
like, how you have established community, or
Hmm.
advice for finding community for other, young creators out
Yeah.
there.
Community is super important in that it motivates you. You have cheerleaders, and not just finding like this community. I guess it's separating like your inner bubble, outer bubble, and people who will just like either hate on your work or like your work and not be honest to you. So finding a group of creatives that you genuinely have chemistry with, like it doesn't feel, because I'm naturally an introvert, and so it's a lot of work for me. And funny enough, a lot of creatives are introverts, and so it's a lot of work for us to just like go and meet people. But when you find those like genuine connections, it's easy and it doesn't feel like work. And so starting there, um, and you have to be intentional about finding community as well. Because when I first, for example, when I first moved to Dallas, I didn't know anyone, and so I went to meetups, even though I hated it. I went to meetups, and if I found one person to talk to, cool. Um, I DM'd like creatives that I really admired that were in the same city as me. Maybe I followed them to set, or I met up with them for coffee. Like, you have to get out of yourself in order to find that community. But once you find it, like, I'm not DMing anyone right now, and I'm great. So, but I had to do that kind of like put myself into the community to then enjoy what the community has to offer. But in enjoying that community, it's having people who are honest with you and like, Tamie, that wasn't your best work, or like, wow, you've really outdone yourself, or wow, I can see your growth. You will get hurt because there are some people that you admire, but they are on their own journey, so they're not gonna be in line with you or have time for you, especially if you're the one reaching out. I've had a lot of like experiences of like just not so great experiences reaching out, but the experiences that I have had has outweighed those initial like putting yourself out there. So it's definitely worth getting outside of your comfort zone to find your community, and then once you're in it, like really invest in your community as well. So share their work, comment on their stuff, if they need help on set, if you have time, like as much as you're taking from your community, you also have to give back. So yeah.
Beautifully said. And I think there's some lessons in there as well about the more the more you put yourself out there, somebody might not have the time, or you might be not rejected, but just like might not be the right fit in that moment. And that isn't a reflection of you.
It's not at all a reflection of
like,
you.
So continuing to like not let that stop you, and pounding on as many doors as you can, especially when you move somewhere and you don't know anybody,
For
in the beginning. And so that's a great lesson, that intentionality, that it comes back around to this, like you were saying earlier, what's the biggest risk is putting yourself out there. And whether that's even before a project has started, in it, after it, putting it out for people to see. But that is where, when you have the strength and courage to do that, that is where you can then shine. When we were talking earlier about putting stuff out there and being vulnerable, and Paco commented like having to stay in that state of constant vulnerability is huge risk. And I think that you on your website, you sort of speak to this. Brene Brown talks about being in the arena. And if you're not doing it, then you can't be saying anything about it. So maybe this is a beautiful place to end. Like, talk to me about what that being in the arena means to you, or that quote that you have.
My website, Man in the Arena. I learned this quote in high school with my favorite debate teacher, Mr. Fuller. I know I'm just gonna send this to Mr. Fuller so he knows.
Shout out,
Mr. Fuller. But Man in the Arena essentially is like, the credit goes to the man in the arena whose face is marred by dust, sweat, and blood, who errs again and again. But there's no error without there's no effort without error or shortcoming, essentially. But for me, that means like no one can tell you anything if they're not the ones actually getting rejected, getting the yeses, the nos, creating, making mistakes, because you're going to make so many mistakes. But you are in this arena, you know why you're in this arena. Like, I'm here because this is the life I want to live. And so in order for me to do that, I have to be the man in the arena. Nobody's going to do it for me. And so it's really important that I remember that I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to fall short. I'm going to not be where I thought I would be at a certain age or a certain time, but I know why I'm here, and I have to do what I have to do to get to where I want to go. So I have to keep going. I have to keep going. I have to keep going. Like, yes, no, vulnerability or not, defensiveness or not, I have to keep going. And that's what that quote means to me. Like, I have to keep doing this for myself, to survive, to live. I have to do this.
You are the woman in the arena.
The woman in the arena.
And I love it. It is incredibly inspiring. And it's just a reminder that we all need every day. Like, it's okay if we're in the struggle, if we're doubting, if we're feeling vulnerable. Like, that's just what it's going to be. And we keep putting ourselves back in the arena because, like you said, you've chosen this life and it's what you need to do. It's beautiful. Tamie, where can everybody find you, follow you, hire you, all the things? Mizizi as well. Like, give us all the places, all the things to check out.
Temi Thomas _ on Twitter. I am Temi Thomas _ on LinkedIn. I am Tamie Precious Thomas. On my website is tamiethomas.com. Essentially, you can find me, DM me, message me, send your contact info to me on all those platforms, and I am readily available to hear what you want to, what project you want to do. And
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much, Tamie, for being with us on this episode of We Are Photographers here on Creative Live TV. Here as part of week 3 of our collaboration with Black women photographers. Super excited. Next week coming up, we have Alexis Hunley, who will be joining us next Wednesday as well. Same time, same place. And it's just been such a pleasure to meet you, to get to know you and know your stories and be inspired and encouraged by the work that you are doing out there. So once again, everybody, be sure to check out the 100+ episodes of We Are Photographers, our podcast that we have here at Creative Live. creativelive.com/podcast. If you are watching right now on Creative Live TV, that's creativelive.com/TV. You can check out, scroll down, see all the upcoming live broadcasts that we have. Where it's live, you get to engage with everybody else who is tuning in at the same time. And as I mentioned at the top, again, be sure to find and follow Tamie as well as Black women photographers. Get involved. Polly is creating, not just a database, but a community. She is a powerhouse, and it's really inspiring to see and watch everything that she is doing. So shout out to Polly as well.
Shout out, Polly.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much again, Tamie. I hope you get your water back quickly.
Yes.
And everybody, thanks for tuning in. That's a wrap for now, but we will see you all next time right here on Creative Live.
Hey guys, what's up? It's Chase Jarvis, founder and CEO of Creative Live. You all know that we have more than 2,000 classes and more than 10,000 hours of learning, inspirational, and motivational content on the platform. I'm super excited to announce a new experience on Creative Live. It's called Fast Class. You've told us that you're busy and sometimes it's hard to dive into a full class from start to finish. So essentially, we're now giving you a shortened highlight version of our top Creative Live classes. You can always dive into the full class with 5, 10, or 15 hours of great content. But now, if you're just looking to focus on a few of the highlights or want to be able to skip quickly to something that really interests you, you can now get a shortened fast class version of that class. We're also thinking this might be able to help you explore a new craft and save time while doing it. This is a great tool to curate your learning experience to help create the life that you seek. So you're probably thinking, great, how do I access this new experience on Creative Live? That's easy. All you have to do is be a subscriber to the Creator Pass, and then all this is yours. If you're feeling isolated and looking for creative connection, try tuning into creativelive.com/TV. That's where we've got a 24/7 live stream from the kitchen counters.
I can do that backlit shot that I really like to do.
From the studios and living rooms of many of the world's top creators, where we're doing musical performances, Q&As, cooking shows, virtual book tour events, drawing, spoken word poetry, and more.
Life passed me by waiting for an invitation when the world is greater than my nation or my occupation. Be someone you've never been. You feel all that adrenaline, it's medicine.
It actually helps me feel like my days are more purposeful.
I hope that out of this deep pain will come some collective growth.
Dive into Creative Live TV today.